Okay, Gary, how many resurrection appearances were there? You read these guys, and it's either one or couple, or, you get the idea. It's very slim pickings here, but the fact is there's a lot more resurrection appearances than these guys are giving credit to.
Yeah, New Testament scholars today don't try to come up with a specific number, but of the ones we're told, they're somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 or 12. Interestingly enough, the earliest account, Tabor tries to make a deal of the fact that the earliest gospel didn't have any appearances. Now that's, in itself, critical scholars agree that Mark knows the appearances. That's clear from a number of reasons we can state if you like. But what I like to say here is they will note progression of legend, and they'll say, look at Mark, no appearances. Look at John, 2 full chapters. And I want to say, what about Paul? The longest list of resurrection appearances comes from the pre-Pauline Creed, 1 Corinthians.
Give them to us.
The list from Paul?
Right.
Well, in the list of Paul, you have 3 groups and you have 3 individuals. He appears to Peter, he appears to James. Last of all, Paul says he adds to the creed or creeds. He says, last of all, he appears to me. The groups, you have the 12, all the apostles, and 500 at once, of whom the greater amount remain alive. And most commentators think Paul's point there is to say, go on down to Galilee and interview them if you want to, going down there. So Paul's got that, a list of 6, and now you've got to put that before Mark. So the fact that Mark knows of appearances but doesn't list them, he says, Tabor says something like this. They go to the tomb, they see an angel, and the angel says, breaking off at verse 8, they find it open, and the women walk away astonished, talk to nobody, and he says, period. He said, that's all you got, Mark.
Yeah, so he's saying Mark had no resurrection appearances, didn't know about any.
Well, see, much of New Testament scholarship will end Mark at 16:8, maybe probably even a majority view. Craig can address that. But I think what New Testament scholars say is Mark, by nature, shortest gospel, likes to leave hints, the messianic secret and so on, likes you to unpack things. There are 3 indications that Mark knows of resurrection appearances.
What are they?
Well, first of all, he predicts. He has Jesus predict his dying and rising. Mark 8, Mark 9, Mark 10, Mark 14, going to Galilee. So he predicts it. Would Mark put an appearance there, predictions by the Lord, and then say, golly, he died and remained in the tomb? That's a prediction of appearance because he knows of appearances. Secondly, Tabor, interestingly, does not mention this. The angel says, he's not here. He was dead. He's alive. Go to Galilee and you will see him. Can't miss that point. Proclamation of resurrection. This third one's a little more hinty, but critical scholars find in the reference, go tell the disciples and Peter that he's raised. That might be the Petrine priority tradition that we see in 1 Corinthians 15, 3 and following, and Luke 24:34. Luke 24:34 is a very important little creedal, one of those embedded creedal statements. He's raised indeed and has appeared to Peter. They see that's for sure in Luke 24, for sure in 1 Corinthians 15, and it may be in Mark, go tell the disciples and Peter. So 2 for sure, prediction, angelic proclamation, possibly Peter. Mark does know their appearance.
What about Tabor's idea that the fact is that the lists differ? I mean, is there something that's valuable here about everybody's got to do it the same way? I mean, if all the 4 Gospels had it exactly in order, they would have said, hey, that's a copy job here, okay? They aren't independent witnesses. Now that you have independent witnesses, I mean, now you're damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Yeah. Two things to say about that. First of all, I think the list in Paul corresponds to more things in the Gospels than we think. Those who say, like some of our references here, the lists hardly correspond at all. And some critical scholars say they don't correspond. Wait a minute. You've got the lead appearance to Peter. Luke 24:34 has that early creedal soundbite that he appeared to Peter, and maybe the Markan allusion there. So you got Peter. You definitely have an appearance to disciples, to the 12, and to all the apostles. Where to put the 500? Okay, maybe we don't have a parallel there. Maybe we don't have a parallel to James. If we take Acts as volume 2 of Luke, which I believe it's Tabor that takes that as volume 2,
sure.
You have the appearances, the threefold appearance to Paul, which corresponds to the last of all, he appears to me. So the list is fairly clear. But I think the second thing I'd say is, I think critical principles here are lacking. The same critical principles that these fellows apply in the other works, and it goes like this. The difference between Paul and John is about 40 years. Every writer preserves traditions from their community. And the fact that over 40 years, different communities, the fact that different communities report different stories is what you'd expect. Nobody has to give an exhaustive list. That's not the way the New Testament works.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about one more thing on resurrection. That is, what does the word spiritual mean when Paul uses that in 1 Corinthians 15? Because these guys use it against Paul, and we'll talk about that when we come right back.